This morning, we're going to prep some skin on pork belly. Pork belly is essentially just a giant slab of bacon. It's an incredibly flavorful cut of meat. It takes well to different kinds of rubs. I've done coffee rubs, taco, bourbon, brown sugar, cherry, all sorts of different stuff. That being said, we don't necessarily need to do anything with it because it has so much flavor on its own. Pork belly is easy to find in almost any grocery store. Skin on pork belly is a little bit more difficult. I actually had to have this custom cut. So the techniques will be a little bit different, but just know that pork belly you find in the store can easily be swapped out. I prefer skin on because when you cook it up, you get the nice meat and fat on the inside, and on the outside here you get a nice little crunchy crust. So what we're going to do first is we're going to score the skin, and we're going to cut down into this layer of fat, making sure that we don't cut into the meat itself. Now that we've got the skin scored, we're ready for salt. Salting meat is an important step that a lot of people either overlook or do incorrectly. The protein molecule is a little spiral with water bound on the outside. And when we cook meat without doing anything to it prior, that protein molecule unwinds and all the water molecules get pushed out, and that leaves us with a dry cut of meat. When we salt it beforehand, we bind up all that water and then essentially create a dry brine. All the water comes to the surface, binds with the salt, and then soaks back into the meat. So if we do that, it's counterintuitive, but we're actually going to be left with a more juicy cut of meat that's less dry. But an important note on that is we don't want to do it with ground meat. That's a completely different process. And we want to make sure that we give the salt enough time to do its job, meaning that we want to salt at least 1 hour for every inch of meat that we're trying to brine. So here we've got 1.5 inches. So we want to be salting for at least 1.5 hours, if not more. So we're going to take and salt this nice and well, getting the bottom. We're going to make sure to get all the sides. And then another benefit of scoring the skin, in addition to just helping it cook better, the skin doesn't take salt very well. So if we lay a little layer at the bottom, put it skin side down and try and rub that in, that's going to help the salt to penetrate on that skin side a little bit better. Now I'm going to wash my hands. And we're going to roll this piece back up and get it in the fridge for at least 1.5 hours. Now that we've given our salt plenty of time to do its thing, we're almost ready for the oven. The last thing we're going to do quick is throw a little bit of olive oil and cracked pepper on top. Give it a little bit of a rub and press. Make sure we get it in there. And then we're going to throw it in an oven set at 325. And that is going to cook for 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on how big and thick our meat is. So our pork belly is done. We can see we've got the top nice and crisp. We're gonna pull it out and let it sit for a little bit. Let it rest, let the juices reabsorb. When we're done, we've got all sorts of great fat in the bottom of the pan here. We can take and drain that out and use it for any type of fat we want to use while cooking. While that's resting, I've got some mushrooms going on the side here. They're just sauteing in butter at the moment. And then once they get about to where we want them, I'm going to add in, this is just cherry juice, bourbon, and a little bit of molasses. And this is going to evaporate pretty quickly. But if we get it and mix it in, we should get a little bit of the flavor from it. And since we didn't flavor our pork at all, these flavors are going to mix real nice when we put it all together. And that's all. Again, this is an incredibly simple and versatile cut. It takes to a lot of different seasonings or no seasonings at all. If all you did was take this and throw it in the oven at 350 degrees for 2 to 2.5 hours, you would still have a great meal.